A crazy Karen living below us is constantly making false noise complaints about me and my boyfriend, claiming that we're screaming at each other and throwing things around our apartment on a daily basis. But after dealing with this for several months, as well as complaining to the property manager herself, me and my boyfriend have found no relief from this crazy Karen, and we are seriously now at our breaking point. Here's what happened. So last July, my boyfriend and I moved into a second-story apartment in a complex. All was fine until about 2 weeks in, when I got a call from the office about a noise complaint from my downstairs neighbor. I've never received a noise complaint in my life, so I'm kind of taken aback. The office manager at the time tells me that my downstairs neighbor didn't give any information about what the noises she heard were, or what time they occurred or anything like that. So I think to myself, whatever, I'm just gonna try and move on with my life. That is until mid-September. I'm trying to dye my hair at about 10 o'clock p.m. and my boyfriend goes to grab something for me from another room. He moves my desk chair to the side, and then suddenly we hear a banging noise. And we come to find out that the downstairs neighbor was actually banging a broomstick on her ceiling, which is my floor, just so she could try and make us shut up. Now, this obviously annoys us, but we just let it go. I finish up my hair and then we go to bed. Except this continues for several weeks. If we drop something, we hear a banging noise. If we walk across our apartment, or if we sit down too hard, or if the desk chair rolls across the hardwood floor, we hear her banging on her ceiling. In early November, my boyfriend catches COVID and stays home for a few days. One night, he gets up to get some medicine and he accidentally drops the bottle. The next day, we were visited by 2 staff members from the office about another noise complaint, stating that there was loud banging in the middle of the night. Now, we deny this and inform them of the banging from the neighbor downstairs, but they just completely dismissed our concern and told us to get a camera. At this point, since we're being banged at almost every day, I'm starting to have really bad mental health episodes because of it. We're pretty much just constantly whispering and walking on our tiptoes, and every loud noise nearly sends me into an anxiety attack. We're looking for reasons to not even be at home, and being home makes me depressed and anxious. And I'm now equating my emotions to a child in an awful home environment. So about a week later, I write the complex an email where I specified multiple times we were banged at, emphasize my emotions, and how I felt like we were being targeted, and that I didn't feel safe confronting the neighbor in person myself. In fact, while I was writing the email, my neighbor banged up at us over me dropping something. But this email went unanswered for over a week. During this week, my cat fell out of a chair and the downstairs neighbor banged up at us again. I had an anxiety attack and my boyfriend got fed up with everything, and he went downstairs to confront this person. I made sure to tell him to record the conversation on his phone, and if things with her started to escalate, to just leave and come back upstairs. Well, he eventually came back incredibly frustrated. The downstairs neighbor had basically whined to him that she had a migraine and she could hear everything we were doing, and she declined to have any real conversation with him, but agreed to stop banging up at us. A few days later, I physically went to the office, which is very annoying since it's like half a mile uphill from my building, and I had to go up there because nobody answered my email. I spoke to the same office workers from before, and I paraphrased what I had written in my email, and I even told them what happened before with my boyfriend and this entitled Karen of a neighbor. They offered to set up a meeting where they would listen from my downstairs neighbor's apartment to try and hear what noises were being made, because at this point, we didn't know what exactly her noise complaints were about, as we would still be given little to no information, and they wanted to set it up in a way where she would stay upstairs with us while we make normal life noises. Now, I agreed to it, but I later learned that my downstairs neighbor denied it. However, 2 weeks later, I get a call at like 10 o'clock in the morning that the office people would like to be by at about 2 o'clock p.m. to do a noise inspection. They then show up like an hour late, and instead of having us make noise and stuff like I expected, the property manager and an office worker came up, and I tell them about some things that I think might be causing the noise, like creaky flooring and some doors that might be sticking. They try to fix the doors, even though it doesn't really work, and then they basically push aside my concerns about being targeted and tell us to just be more considerate, how we need to mind our hours from 10 o'clock p.m. until 7 in the morning, and that we need to call the courtesy officer if there are any issues at night. Now, I want to emphasize that we do not stomp. We don't bang things around, we don't have loud arguments, we don't throw parties or drag furniture around. We literally don't do anything like that. All my boyfriend and I do is come home from work, watch TV or play video games, make dinner, and then go to bed. My elderly cat does kind of stumble or fall to the ground instead of jumping, but she weighs like 7 pounds, and she's not very active, and honestly, I think she's probably loudest when she uses the litter box. But the only complaints we've received regarding noise from her have all been about her jumping all over everything. We even bought a $50 rug to put under our desk chairs, to try and muffle some of the noise from them. We tried to be quieter when the noise complaints came in, and I feel like we've been considerate, but nothing's ever good enough for our neighbor. It genuinely felt like she wanted us to float around our apartment or something like that. Now, I hoped at this point that things would calm down. We stopped hearing banging, which was really good, and there were a few nights where I heard loud yelling from my next door neighbors, which I recorded some of it, because I knew that if my downstairs neighbor heard it, she would attribute it to us. Then, a few weeks later, we got an email from the property manager, basically saying that we would be under a lease violation and get a fine if we didn't stop with the noise. Now, obviously, we were angry, we were tired of being targeted, and we were exhausted for being vilified for just existing in our apartment. So, we responded to the property manager, expressing our displeasure, explaining that we still haven't really been given information on what exactly the noise is or when it's occurring. And we also said that we will pursue legal action if this continues. Well, when we said that, the property manager changed her tune very fast. She told us that her email was a cursory one that she always sends with noise complaints, even though what she sent was very much personalized to our situation. She then informed us that the noises reported were banging, moving furniture, and loud arguing. I then tell her that I have video proof that the arguing was not us, and we decided to schedule a meeting to talk to the property manager about it the following week, and that until then, she won't issue us any lease violations. During the night before this meeting, we literally spent the evening being as quiet as possible. We ate leftovers, we built a Lego set in bed together, we watched TV with the volume so low that we could only follow along with subtitles, and then we went to bed by 10 o'clock p.m. Neither of us got up during the night, and yet the next day, the property manager told us that the stupid neighbor downstairs had reported that we were specifically very loud the night before. Anyways, at the meeting with the property manager, I showed her the video that I had taken of my next door neighbors arguing, and I brought up how it says in the lease that everyday noises from other apartments are expected, and the leasing office cannot be expected to stop them from penetrating your apartment. I also reiterated how I felt like we were being targeted by the downstairs neighbor, and how my mental health has tanked because of it. We finished it off with how we needed this problem fixed, otherwise we expected to be let out of our lease with no fees attached, especially for all the trouble that this has caused us. After hearing all of this, the property manager confided that the downstairs neighbor was making multiple reports about us a week, and honestly, she seemed like a bit of a Karen. She wondered briefly if the downstairs neighbor was being homophobic or transphobic towards us, or if she was so self-absorbed in herself that she wasn't thinking about the fact that we too are human beings with lives. The property manager then said that she would talk to the complex's courtesy officer because apparently he hasn't been doing his job correctly. In fact, he's told the downstairs Karen to literally call the cops on us about the noise instead of observing the noise claims from her apartment. The property manager then said that she wouldn't be hitting us with a lease violation unless there was undeniable proof that we were being unnecessarily loud. So we went on our way, hoping everything would be fine. However, in February, I got new upstairs neighbors, and as they were moving in, the noise level rose. Now, I didn't mind this. They were moving in, so there was going to be some noise. I would just put in some earbuds and ignore it like a reasonable person, but the downstairs Karen somehow heard all of it and decided to start banging up at us again. But instead, this time it was one big heavy bang that literally shook my floor. It was like she had thrown something heavy at the ceiling or something like that. Now, I just let it go, and I made a note of it in my head, just in case it continued after the upstairs neighbors finished moving in. And you know what? It absolutely did. Around the beginning of March, I sent an email to the property manager, and I let her know of all the times that we had been banged at and what we were doing when it occurred. But again, this email went completely unanswered. We went up to the leasing office to get a package a few days later, and we ran into the property manager, where she explicitly told us that she would be ignoring my email because she was so busy with all the construction going on in the complex, stating that she just didn't have the energy to take care of it. She also suggested that the bangs from the neighbor downstairs might have actually been the door to the stairs next to my apartment falling shut, but I know it's not that because the door's quieter, and it definitely doesn't shake my floor, so that was really annoying. But at this point, we decided to move at the end of our lease anyway, so whatever. Now, there were a couple more banging incidents that I had emailed about where the property manager gave very generic responses until she informed us that the downstairs neighbor would be moving soon. Since then, there hasn't been any more banging, so I was assuming that either the downstairs neighbors gave up or the property manager finally did something to make her stop. Yet a few days ago, I was checking the Google reviews for my complex since they will be emailing us asking us to leave a good review, and I saw that downstairs neighbor had left a nice long 1-star 1-star review mentioning the situation with us. And trust me, it's probably the most entitled thing I've ever read in my life. She said the following: "Our neighbors above us have been a nightmare, and you can hear every step, including them slamming things on the floor, and their cat jumps off of everything all the time. They're moving furniture around, and they're doing it all throughout the day and night. It has been a mix of our neighbors being truly inconsiderate and the apartment not installing the correct subflooring in between the levels. When we would complain to the complex several times every week, especially about the extreme levels of noise, the manager would just claim that she took care of it, and it even got to a point where she told me that their next violation would come with a charge. Well, she just backed out of that claim the next week and instead instructed me to start calling the courtesy patrol and said that if he lets them know the noise level is extreme, then they would only charge them with a violation. So it felt like they were questioning our integrity. I have never had to provide video proof to another complex when situations arose. Other complexes I've lived at in our city have always done their due diligence and at least contacted the other party when issues came up. And when the courtesy officer came out, he would usually be in a different part of our city, and it would take him a while just to get to the property. He would always go outside the neighbor's door, and he wouldn't listen to the noise from our apartment to truly understand how loud they were being. He was always very rude when I spoke to him also, so I just eventually gave up." Now, a few things about this. I do believe the part about the subflooring to be very true. There are some very creaky parts on my floor, but that's not our fault, and we should not be expected to change our home life to accommodate her comfort, even though we did try to do that and try to be as quiet as possible, not to mention the fact that we spent money trying to dampen some of the noise. But sure, we're the ones being truly inconsiderate. And when I read that, I was thinking to myself, I would really love to see what video proof she has. But you know what? I bet it's just of my next door neighbors arguing, since things didn't really ramp up until after that. And I proved that it wasn't us. And you know what? The whole comment about feeling like the complex was questioning her integrity and that the other complexes have always just taken her word for it means that she's done this kind of thing before. So if you don't want to hear us above you, then just buy a house, or at least get an apartment on the top floor. Also, we have been in constant contact with the complex since December, so I don't know why she's trying to imply that they haven't contacted us. Now, it is creepy that she mentioned the courtesy officer was standing outside of our door, because we didn't know about it, and we definitely do not like that. But I really do love that she conveniently left out the part where she got away with banging up at us for several months. So right now, that's about where we stand. At the time of writing this, she is still down there, and we're moving at the end of next month, and I'm just praying that nothing else happens. Yeah, your downstairs neighbor was being super obnoxious for literally no reason. They're banging on the ceiling, demanding that you shut up, but still refuse to give any proof that you're actually making any noise in the first place. And I can only imagine how annoying that must have been. And it doesn't help that the property manager is super neglectful and literally just ignores all of your concerns for months on end. So to that end, I don't blame you for trying to get out of your lease and move away, regardless of if that Karen's gonna be moving or not. And I just love that 1-star review that the entitled Karen downstairs was making about you guys, because it was an absolute mess. Like, she literally did not know what she was talking about, and it was all such a jaded point of view from her own delusion. So truly, I'm so sorry that you dealt with that, but thankfully it sounds like you won't have to deal with that for much longer, because this property manager and this Karen absolutely suck, and you did not deserve to be treated like this in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for insisting to my husband and his parents that I need help with our kids and that we need to hire someone to help out? Because right now I'm being called insensitive and that I just want to pawn off my stepdaughter to somebody else. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my husband and I have 3 kids in our home. My stepdaughter is 9 years old, and I've known her since she was 2 years old, and I became her stepmom when she was 4. We also have a 3-year-old son and a 10-month-old daughter together. Now, to give some background information first, my stepdaughter's mom was not in the picture when I met my husband. She never wanted to claim any parental responsibilities, and when I met my husband, his ex had accumulated a lot of child support debt and had not seen my stepdaughter since the hospital. I signed up for being a second parent, and I love my stepdaughter. And in my heart, I consider her one of my kids just as much as my biological children. And we had such a good relationship. She would sometimes call me mom, sometimes by my name, but she'd always say my husband and I were her parents, and she adored her brother when he was born. Well, over 2 years ago, her mom came back into the picture and said that she wanted to see my stepdaughter. My husband said that it would need to be a gradual thing, but my stepdaughter had a right to know her. His ex didn't like that and sued for full custody, and yes, she did this after having nothing to do with her for 7 years. She ended up losing, but this started us on a step-up plan for her to gain some custody, and it has been an absolute nightmare. My relationship with my stepdaughter suffered badly because of all of this. Her relationship with her siblings has also suffered, and she is so rude now. She refuses to listen to me, and she rejects the three of us, and it's always worse after she sees her mom. My husband took this issue to court, and the judge made it clear that he will never sever the relationship between mom and daughter no matter what. So at this point, I'm struggling. I'm giving her the time and attention needed, and it really comes at the cost of our younger kids. But if I focus just on them, it's not giving her the time and attention that she needs, and the counselor told us that she needs to see that I'm not going anywhere, and she really emphasized that this was important. The counselor even spoke to the judge, who was a different one at this time, and the judge said that he was going to follow the previous judge's decision that contact is never to be severed between the mother and the daughter. But my husband has brought this issue back to the court because it was just getting worse. So now we're at a point where I can't be in charge of all three at the same time all day, especially now that school is out, but even during school time, it's too much. I told my husband that we need to hire some sort of helper for me with the kids, but he was against it and told me it was a big expense after we spent a fortune on court and therapy. His parents heard us talking about it the other day, and they jumped in to say that I wouldn't do this if all three of them were my biological kids, and that I just want to pawn my stepdaughter off on someone else. Now, I insisted that this was not true to all three, and I insisted that I needed help because the kids will suffer in the long run, and so will my mental health. My husband felt guilty because I got very emotional, but his parents said that I just proved I wouldn't do this if they were really all mine. So am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I'm so exhausted and I really don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think you're trying to do the best thing that's possible for you and your family, and if that means you need a bit of extra help to get that going, then so be it. Like, it really does sound like the biological mom is a piece of work, and she's clearly just an awful mother altogether. And for her to step in and be like, okay, now I'm ready to be a parent, while also basically turning her daughter against the original poster, like, that altogether is just so toxic. There's literally no reason for that. It is nobody's fault except for the biological mom that she was a terrible parent, and that she's continuing to prove that she's a bad parent. And you know what? When it comes to your husband's parents chiming in like that, they seriously need to mind their own business. They do not live with these kids on a daily basis, and they do not know how hard things are currently with your stepdaughter. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because honestly, this situation sounds incredibly tough. My boss demands that we as teachers wear either dress shoes or boots to work, regardless of the circumstances. So I decided to maliciously comply, thus making them regret their decision almost immediately. Here's what happened. The superintendent of my old school was comically rigid in his views and seemed to have his mindset stuck in the 1960s. He told us without a hint of irony that the only way students would respect us is if we were dressed professionally. Not even business casual was okay for him. Faculty wearing sneakers or blue jeans was a legitimate cause for termination under our contract. The male staff dress code demanded that we wear a long sleeve button-up shirt with a tie, as well as dress pants with a belt, and dress shoes or boots every single day. There was, however, a note in our single contract stating that the dress code could be reasonably relaxed if it was not possible to follow due to a medical condition, but unfortunately no details were provided beyond that. Well, my wife and I moved apartments one weekend and my feet hurt, so I made the executive decision that that was a medical condition, and I decided to wear sneakers to school on Monday. I figured I could just lay low and keep my feet hidden from any pesky administrators, and I definitely knew that my students would not care. Well, wouldn't you know it, that was the day the superintendent and building administrators were coming around room by room to give the school board members a building tour. So of course I had to get up and greet them. Nobody said anything to me, but I did receive a nasty email from the assistant principal reminding me of the expectations set forth in the teacher dress code. There was no note on my file or anything like that. I only got a warning, which fair enough, I suppose, but it really pissed me off that they didn't even ask why I decided to wear sneakers in the first place and just sent me a warning with no chance to defend myself. And it was then that I decided to maliciously comply. Now, the dress code, as I mentioned, had said either dress shoes or boots. I went ahead and bought the most over-the-top, bombastic pair of boots on their website. I'm talking black leather with 3-in platforms, as well as chains, studs, zippers, and straps galore. They came about halfway up my shins, and of course, I tucked my pants into them. My students thought they were amazing, and there are pictures of my feet all over various social media sites. A few of my coworkers took it upon themselves to give me a stern warning, while others gave me a high five. After 4 days days of wearing these boots with no incident, the principal ended up behind me in the hallway. Rather quickly, he asked me, "What in the world are those?" So I told him that they were boots to ensure that I'm in compliance with the dress code, and then I just kept on walking. That afternoon, I received an email from him stating that I was intentionally being unprofessional and that this would be documented in my record, and further dress code offenses could lead to disciplinary action or suspension. I immediately got in touch with my union, who quickly dealt with that in my favor, since they were indeed boots in the first place. I also explained to the union that I only did this because of the nasty email I received for wearing sneakers with my sore feet. The union rep immediately smirked, told me that she was unfamiliar with that rule, and told me to go ahead and wear whatever footwear I wanted, and that if anyone had a problem, I could just claim that I had sore feet. So, as a long story short, I ended up wearing my sneakers every single day for the entire rest of the school year, and I never had another problem as long as I worked there. This is honestly my favorite way of maliciously complying, because the original poster found a hilarious loophole and they decided to exploit that. And honestly, based on the way this school administration was acting, I don't blame you for a second for acting in the way that you did. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.